We're lucky to have with us today Dan Nagan, who is an account manager at Thomson Reuters, and he is going to talk to us about a product, a new product that we're pretty excited about, and is available to the public at both of the law library's locations in Seattle and in Kent. So without any further ado, I am going to turn things over to Mr. Nagan.
Thanks so much, Sean. So a lot of what I'll be doing today is going to be a live demonstration within CoCounsel, which is the new resource that is available at the King County Law Library, as Sean mentioned. Um, and so my CoCounsel screen should be coming through now for everyone else. I'll be going through several workflows within here to kind of show and give an idea of how can this be utilized by you. These are available today in both locations. Um, and if you have questions as we're going through, feel free to send them through the chat, like Sean mentioned. If it's something that is relevant to what I'm demonstrating at that time, if it's something that's clarifying something that I'm going over, I may address it in that moment. Otherwise, we'll have time at the end of the presentation to address any questions that people have. Um, Before I go into some of the demonstration of how CoCounsel operates, I want to just set the stage in terms of letting you know what is CoCounsel and how exactly does it work. So if you haven't utilized tools like this, CoCounsel is a generative AI assistant that was designed to assist legal professionals in performing their day-to-day work. You may have heard of this as it originally was created as case text that was acquired by Thomson Reuters in, I want to say 2023, and has since been boosted out and developed further using Thomson Reuters materials and editorial team. Case text and CoCounsel are tied into a private instance of GPT-4. That is the AI behind the scenes that is powering it. And what it allows you to do is log into this and provide your own material and information to create analysis and delegate work to that AI, something akin to what you might do if you were assigning work to a paralegal or a legal assistant. And it's designed to help free up time by completing some of the more time consuming, mundane tasks quickly and accurately, making it so that you have more time to do different work that a machine simply is not able to do. It's designed to help analyze and extract information very quickly from materials that you provide it. It's not going to do every single step of a project, but it is going to give you a very strong starting point, help you extract the information that you need from complex documents, and put things into a coherent order that you can then take and put into action very quickly. Um, in terms of CoCounsel, what is available at King County Law Library is going to be the version that is referred to as CoCounsel Core. You may have heard of other variations of CoCounsel available from Thomson Reuters. There's a version that is integrated directly into Westlaw, where rather than searching your own resources, it searches Westlaw's databases. That is something that at present is not available at King County Law Library. So what this is going to be able to do, what I'm going through today, is going to be the version that allows you to upload materials and run analyses of those documents. Um, in terms of what separates CoCounsel from other AI tools that might be available, especially other public source resources like ChatGPT or tools like that, there's a couple of things that really set CoCounsel apart from that. The first being that this was designed specifically for attorneys to be utilizing. This is not a tool that is being repurposed after the fact to help with different legal tasks or kind of fitting a different mold. This is something that from the beginning was designed for attorneys and trained by attorneys specifically to complete legal work. Important to that is that anything that is input into this system, both the queries that might be run as well as documents that may be uploaded into this, do not go into training the AI in any capacity. So This is a common issue with public-facing AI tools like ChatGPT. What you might upload into that is going to be going into that AI and training it and potentially helping out with output from other users. There's been a lot of issues in terms of just accuracy using tools like that, as well as just maintaining confidentiality. So, an important part of using CoCounsel is that nothing that you enter goes into training the AI, nor is it able to be seen by anyone outside of who is on that platform. Important to that is when you are done using CoCounsel at the law library, there is always an option over on the left here where I can see the chats that I have been doing. I can go in and delete these, and that will then delete the record of the conversation I had as well as any materials that I uploaded into it. I'll be going into that a little bit further near the tail end of this, just in terms of best practices and reminders when using CoCounsel at the library. But that's one thing that I'll note. But in terms of training the AI or going out to anyone other than yourself, that is a huge step that has been taken to make sure that there is security in anything that is uploaded into this. Also, fundamental to how this operates, and one of the big benefits of Thomson Reuters being behind this is that since being acquired by Thomson Reuters, we have put in a tremendous amount of man hours as well as money to boosting this out and making sure that it is able to do what attorneys actually need to be able to accomplish. So it is backed by the legal expertise and analysis that is afforded by our editorial team as well as our staff of AI engineers who are constantly going in and making sure that it stays on the guardrails that they have set for it. They are the ones that are working to train it using their own materials. That is what goes into keeping it on track with accomplishing the skills that it needs to do. And the final thing that is important to this that helps prevent instances of the AI creating something that doesn't exist or not providing you something that is actually supported by actual authority and documentation is that our AI utilizes something called retrieval augmented generation, which in part forces CoCounsel to base all of its answers on actual authority and always tie it back to the primary source that it found that information from. As I'm going through the different examples that I have prepared, you'll see in here that there will be footnotes tied to everything that I'm going over that always link back to the actual document that I provided that will show me exactly what was being used to give me the answer that I received. Um, and so, in terms of utilizing CoCounsel, the general landing page is going to look like what I have pulled up here. In the main body of the web page, I have the option to utilize it like a chat service. I can go through and explore the different skills that are available. And in addition, underneath the chat option, there's an option to upload documents. This is where I would go to upload materials that I want to actually be analyzing. Anything that I upload, that is going to be what it is looking at. And so it is a very closed data set of what it is going to be analyzing when accomplishing the tasks that I ask it to do. It's going to be restricted to what I've uploaded and provided it. Um, what I can do here, just to kind of give an overview, is go over the skills that it is able to accomplish. So it is able to review documents that I've uploaded, either just answering key information from the documents that I have provided it, pulling information and data out of those, or doing even a side-by-side comparison to identify how have these documents changed or are there any key differences in those. It's able to create a succinct summarization of what I've uploaded. So if I've uploaded a document that is dozens or hundreds of pages long, it's going to be able to help summarize that and put it into a structure that is easier for me to get an idea of what exactly is going on in that material. It's able to create timelines that will go through the entire document or multiple documents and create a single cohesive timeline of the events. It's able to also create drafting, so I can draft correspondence and other materials. I can also have it help create an outline for a deposition or an interview, however it is that I might be needing to create essentially questions and overarching topics for a certain subject. And a lot of these, I can utilize them on a one off basis. Ideally, how this was designed was I will provide it with materials and accomplish multiple steps of these different skills with those documents to extract the information that I need. I can then take those materials, download them, save them so that I have them for reference. And that is going to be what I'm going to be working from. And the idea is that these skills will flow into one another. I don't need to necessarily go in here and select, okay, I need to do a review documents and prompt it that way. I can just start typing out what it is that I want to accomplish. And at a stage when it actually needs documents to accomplish the task that I've asked it to do, it will then prompt me to provide it with materials that I want analyzed. So I'm going to be going through 5 different examples over here on the left. Each of these is going to be 1 or 2 different analyses of documents. Then I'm going to conclude by going through sort of a workflow that shows all of these different steps at different stages of the analysis process. Um, One thing that I'll note as well is with the upload option, uploading files from my device, I do have a size limit, but this is able to register and read PDFs, even if the PDF is not OCR'd, Word documents, emails, text files, HTML. There is a size limit to these, and that is something to keep in mind. I have done analyses of documents in here that are upwards of thousands of pages long, and it will complete the analysis. Although, when I have longer documents, it's going to take longer to accomplish what it is that I'm doing and asking it to do because there is naturally much more information that it is going through and processing. So, in those instances, it's not unusual for it to take 5, 10 plus minutes to accomplish what it is that I've asked it to do. Depending on the complexity of the request, the amount of information that I'm asking it to go through, that is going to naturally cause it to take longer to accomplish the end task. But most of what I'm showing today is going to be analysis of documents that are maybe a dozen to 3 dozen pages. Some of them are upwards of 100 pages long. So it varies in terms of length, but pretty much everything that I'm going to be showing today, the output was done in approximately 2 minutes. So the first area that I'm going to go into is this chat that is labeled Summarize Pro Say Complaint. And what I asked it to do here was I uploaded a complaint that was filed by a pro se litigant. This is 2 dozen pages or so, and is difficult to really parse out what exactly is going on in this document. What is the party actually asking for here? And so what I needed it to do was just help me get a baseline understanding of what's taking place in this filing. And so all I had to do was ask it, please summarize this document, and I uploaded this file. And it took about a minute and a half to generate this high level overview of what exactly is going on in this filing. So it's giving me an overview, helping identify the allegations and claims raised by the party, going over what exactly is taking place in this filing. And like I mentioned when going over what CoCounsel does and how it operates, I see here these footnotes. And if I select these, it's going to pull up in a side comparison here this option that is showing me the actual document, and it's going to highlight for me where exactly is it pulling this language from. So it's going to help me identify what is it relying upon when it's giving me this answer. So right here, I can see, okay, here is what it is looking at. I can kind of click through here and see what is it looking at when it's giving me this answer, helping me get a better idea of what exactly is being relied upon here. This is giving me a much easier way of understanding this filing than if I was just trying to read this myself manually. And something that you can do with really anything that you're asking in CoCounsel is after you've gotten an answer, if you need it to clarify a certain detail or dig into something further, I can always ask it to revise what it is that it's provided me. Sometimes, if the output is not exactly what it is that I'm expecting, what I always recommend doing is looking at how it is that I phrased a request, because ultimately this is only as good and competent as the person using this. This is not a replacement for understanding the law and being able to understand how to interpret these materials and pull out the information that you need. It still needs the expertise of a legal practitioner to really get the most out of it. And so understanding what it is that you're looking for and being very clear with how it is that you're asking for requests tends to lead to the best output from this. So here I asked it to just revise the summary and then focus more on information related to the allegations and claims raised by the petitioner. So it then restructured this and really just honed in on the allegations and claims that are listed in this document. So I can always ask it to clarify or drill into what it is that I'm looking at. If I get a summary that is too short, I can ask it to expand upon that. I can ask it to go page by page with a summary and go into fine detail, making sure that I know the bullet points of everything within there. If I don't specify how it is that I want the output to look like, it's going to leave it up to interpretation. It's very similar to if you were handing something to a paralegal or a clerk or a first year associate and asking them to complete a task. And if you don't give them direction on something, they're going to leave it up to their own interpretation. But so this is an idea of how that summarization skill works. The next one that I'm going to go into is extracting information. And so what this allows me to do is I can provide it with different materials and have it review those materials and pull out information that I need, making it a lot faster to do document review. Um, so what I uploaded here was a dozen or so emails from Enron, from the different publicly available Enron emails. And I asked it to review these emails and identify instances of sarcasm or deceptive accounting practices. So I was able to ask it something that might be a little bit more subjective, but this then reviewed those email exchanges that I provided it, and it's given me this short answer, helping me identify where in some of these email exchanges is there instances of sarcasm or deceptive accounting practices. Again, I have these footnotes. These are going to take me through to the different materials that I have uploaded into this, helping me identify what exactly I need to look at. This is also looking across multiple documents. So these footnotes aren't all to the same resource. This is going between the different filings that I've uploaded into this. So it's giving me an answer, helping me better understand multiple different documents in here. I then asked it to review the emails further and identify additional issues or problematic language that may give rise to legal liability. Provide this answer in a table format. So this is an example of what I mentioned with that summarization where I can give it very clear direction in terms of how do I want the answer formatted. If I don't tell it to format in a specific way, it's going to leave it up to interpretation. Almost always when that happens for me, I get just sort of a paragraph or several paragraphs breaking down the answer that I've gotten from this. And so in here, it then looked through those documents and put it together into a table for me. I could have asked it to structure this differently or more specifically, but this is just an example of kind of how I can structure this differently based on asking it to revise things. So this is drilling into each of these emails and identifying additional issues that might be present within here. So for this, I see that it's forwarding to multiple recipients. It's being sent to personal contacts, professional contacts, being used for personal contact or content. This is something that might be an issue. We know from having any familiarity with the Enron case, there's a lot of issues that were present with what was going on here, but this is reviewing those documents, helping me identify additional issues that are present within here. So this is an example of how it's able to review these materials and answer questions about these very quickly, looking across all of these and helping me just review these resources a lot faster. This can also be useful if you know that there is something being discussed in a document and you can't recall where exactly it is. It's easier than necessarily doing a control find to find that key language because you may not know the exact way that it's being discussed, but this is going to be able to search across that and look for that general concept or idea and help pinpoint where that is occurring in the document that I've uploaded or documents, making it a lot faster to just find where it is that I need to look in here. I can ask a lot more specific questions as well when reviewing documents. So this, I re-uploaded that pro se filing that I had in the summarization, and I asked it to analyze this and list out the claims raised by the petitioner. This is just giving me a coherent list without all of the additional context and statements from the petitioner of what are the actual claims that are being raised here. And so I can see here plainly listed out, these are the different claims. Again, it's pinpointing where are these occurring in the document. This allows me to just double check and make sure that I have the full context for what exactly is being discussed in here. This is one that really kind of goes on. And so this is helping me just pinpoint, get a clear idea of what exactly are the claims being raised. I was then able to ask it to just identify within here inconsistencies in the arguments that are being raised. And so this is going back through that same document and helping identify, are there details that conflict with each other? Is there information that doesn't really help support the claim that this party is making? And so again, in here, this is going to help me better understand what exactly am I looking at. Here, it's going to make it a bit easier to understand where is this information coming from, what exactly is being discussed here, makes it a lot easier to analyze and really drill into documents to get a full understanding of what is going on in that filing that I'm looking at. I can also use this to help draft different questions. And so I mentioned up top that this can be used for deposition preparation, but really what this allows me to do is draft different topics as well as questions to drill into those topics. I've seen this used for cross-examination. I've seen it used for deposition prep, just for general interview preparation. What this allows me to do is just analyze documents and figure out areas that I can dig into and where I should try and probe further on this. And so with this, I then re-uploaded that pro se filing and asked it to prepare questions for cross-examination based on the complaint. It then gave me overall topic areas, drilling into just general information, going into the actual incident underlying this filing, interactions with the city, police, and the court system, responses that were taken, involvement from the state, and then the damages and relief that were being sought. Similar to what I did with that summarization, where I was able to ask it to revise what it is that I had, I could ask it to restructure what it is that I'm looking at or change the tone of what it is that I have. And so with this, I asked it to revise the questions so that they can be easier to understand for a layperson. Since this is with a pro se litigant, I want to make sure that this is something that can be easier understood. I've seen this be used to help draft questions if you're trying to do an interview with a child to make it easier for a child to understand and lighten those questions and the tone. changing this to be more or less adversarial, more or less personable. There's a lot that you can do in terms of just asking it to revise what it is that it put together. And so it then went back through what it put together above there and rephrased these to be a bit easier to understand, taking out a lot of the legalese from some of these. And the final example that I have here is an example of just drafting different correspondence. So I've seen this used quite frequently for drafting letters, drafting correspondence, drafting emails. Um, this is able to help just put together a first draft of something that it is that you're working on. So in here, I asked it to review a filing, indicated that I represent the defendant in the case. I need to draft a letter to my client summarizing this document, asked it to just be a formal tone. And so it then put together this template for me, going through here, helping me summarize what exactly it is that I uploaded for it, giving me something that I can kind of work from, revise as I need to. And something that I should note with everything that I have in terms of a response in here, I have the option right here at the top of this skill. It'll label for me what was it that it was doing. So here it's using the draft skill. Over here on the right, I have an option to just download this. This then lets me download a copy of it with and without the footnotes. So if I download a copy with the footnotes, that's going to have those links back to the underlying document. If I don't necessarily need those in this final resource that I'm using, I can just download a version of this that is just blank. Um, this then lets me have that first draft, open it up in Microsoft Word, and then revise this as I need to. One thing that you can also do with CoCounsel is it's able to draft in other languages. It's able to also translate other documents to and from those languages. So in here, I asked it to revise a version of this letter to be written in Spanish. Um, it then was able to take and translate this over into Spanish. I've seen this used for, I would say at this point, 2 dozen different languages. I've seen it done in Spanish, French, Italian, Korean. I've seen it done in Armenian as well as a number of other languages. So there's a lot that you might not necessarily initially think that you're able to do with this, but it can. I can upload a document that is written in Spanish and have it translate that into English. I can even communicate with it in Spanish if I needed to, or in another language. So I don't necessarily need to chat with this in just English. I can communicate with this with other languages as well. And something else that I'll highlight here. So at the top of these different drafts options, when I have the output, I have the option to download these. In the upper right corner here, it has this option that is labeled results. And if I click results, it's going to take me to this screen that is going to show me what is it that I've asked it to do during this chat conversation and allow me to jump to that section of it. So this allows me to just kind of go back through and quickly identify where it is that I have the output from CoCounsel. So if I needed to jump in and just see, here's that Spanish translation that I have, grab that, get a Word version of this, I can easily retrieve that just by going to the results option. This makes it a lot faster if you've been going through several steps and skill analyses within CoCounsel and you're getting ready to log off and head out. This allows you to just very quickly jump through, find the results that you need, and download a copy of those for yourself. And so the final thing that I'm going to do here is sort of a workflow of multiple steps based on uploading a docket. And so in here, I'm going to be going through a fair amount of different stages of review, touching on a lot of what I've already talked about and shown, as well as a few additional things. So what I've uploaded here is a full docket that is from a slip and fall case. And so the first thing that I've asked it to do is do a review of the complaint and then the amended complaint and identify for me how these two documents are different. So this is an example of that compare documents feature that I mentioned. This is something that I've also used for comparing contracts, as well as other resources like policies or anything like that. So a lot of what I have loaded in here today is related to litigation, but it's able to do a lot of analysis of transactional documents as well as even resources that may not be necessarily in one category or another. I've used this a lot with litigate or not litigation, legislation to help quickly review proposed legislation and extract information on what exactly is going on in that legislation, what is being proposed. So while the examples that I have loaded today is really focus in on litigation, there is a lot of application outside of that realm. But so here it's doing an analysis showing me what is present in the amended version of this complaint as well as the original complaint. So it's helping me better understand what exactly is going on in each of these documents and really specifically helping me understand what did they do differently in the amended complaint that wasn't present in that original filing. And so this helps me very easily understand what exactly changed in these two different documents. Really, what I see is that the first one, having become very familiar with this case over time, there was a lot that was not built out in that original filing. And so they really drilled into more details of the facts as well as the legal obligations of the defendant in the amended complaint. But so this is giving me an idea of what exactly changed across these two documents. The next step that I asked it to do was do a summarization of the motion for summary judgment in this case, as well as the reply to the motion for summary judgment. So this is going through and summarizing both of those documents for me, giving me just an idea of what is being argued in the summary judgment motion, as well as the reply to that. The next thing that I asked it to do, this is one that I haven't shown yet, but I asked it to create a timeline of events from all of the different documents in this docket. So what this is analyzing is these 16 documents. So it's looking at the initial complaint, the amended complaint. It's looking at those summary judgment motions that I just looked at. It's also looking at different filings that were also submitted alongside this. There are email exchanges in here, and so what it's going to do is it's looking through all of these different documents to create a single cohesive timeline of events. And similar to what I saw with that extract information with the Enron emails, this is going to be giving me something that is going through each of these documents and pinpointing where is this occurring in which document, making it a lot easier to just kind of get a clear idea of the events that are falling within here. If I see multiple footnotes in here, this is letting me know that this information appears in multiple spaces. So this is going to let me see different instances that this date is supported across these filings that I've uploaded. What I've also seen done using this timeline creation is uploading one document to create a timeline, creating a timeline from another document, and then asking CoCounsel to compare those two timelines that it created against each other. So there's a lot that you can do just in terms of sequencing of the requests that you submit to this. So it's able to look back at what it is that I've already done to build upon that. There is a short-term memory within here. It's not unlimited. It doesn't go back throughout time. Um, so for me, if I've done something 30 days ago and I try to ask it additional questions on that, it's not going to fully remember all of that. Although if I need to, I can easily go here to the upload and select files from this matter. It's going to then find the documents that I've uploaded in here and help me just make it easier if I need to point it back in the right direction. But this is allowing me to just get a clean idea of what occurred here. If it doesn't have a clean idea from what it is that it's looking at of when something occurred, it's going to identify that it's not certain. So right here, it's unclear from the documents when this event occurred, but it's clear enough that it occurred after October 22nd, 2019. This allows me to go deeper into this document to better understand, can I can I extract more information from this? Sometimes it's from the nature of what it is that I'm looking at that it is hard to parse out when exactly something occurred. This tends to be over inclusive of information. So if it finds something, it will err on the side of caution and include a reference to it. Potentially, it's not something that I need in here, or I need to revise this. I can download a copy of this and then change that to make it more clear when exactly that occurred. But this is making it a lot easier for me to identify where in these underlying documents is this event occurring? Can I extract more information from it just by giving it a look myself rather than relying upon this tool to find that? So again, this is not going to complete every single step of the process, but the creation of this timeline, this took, I would say, maybe 10 minutes to generate. This is a lot faster than if I had done this manually. Um, Same thing for all of these. This is giving me a much cleaner starting point for any of this analysis than if I was trying to do this myself by hand. So here's that timeline in completion. You can see as it gets more and more specific and closer to the present day, these events are going to get a lot more frequent. Sometimes it's going to get a lot more specific in terms of timing of when things occurred. Um, the next thing I asked it to do was just identify inconsistencies present in the plaintiff's case. So this is looking through what I've already provided it to identify, is there anything that conflicts within here? The biggest issue that is present in this, I know this from having reviewed this a lot of times, is that initially they claim that there was a protrusion on a staircase that they tripped over. Later, they begin talking about that there was a wet surface, that they slipped on something that was wet with water. So the story changes over time in here from whether it was a trip or a slip. And so in here, it's giving me this analysis. It's also helping identify other inconsistencies that might be present within here, other areas that I'm going to want to take a closer look at to better understand, is there something here that I can really drill into? I then asked it to follow up on that analysis of the inconsistencies to identify any other weaknesses that are present in here. And so it looks through this, it emphasizes again that issue of the slip or trip. It also identifies that there's a lack of evidence supporting that there was an actual hazardous condition. And so this is helping me just extract a lot of information from these filings, especially looking across multiple documents to identify what should I be focusing in on in this case. I then asked it to help prepare deposition questions. So I gave it some framing. I don't always really need to do this. For the most part, I really don't need to prompt it in any specific way. If you've used other AI tools like ChatGPT, you might be familiar where you need to often give it prompting to identify kind of the context for completing the request, telling it that it is looking at this from a certain point of view, or that it is an attorney with X amount of years of experience. That is not really a necessity here. That is because, like I mentioned up top, this was designed for legal professionals. So it already has that context built into it. But for this, I asked it, I represent the defendant. I need to prepare deposition questions. Please help draft questions that drill into these inconsistencies and weaknesses. So it's looking back to those previous two answers to help generate additional insight into how can I drill into these areas. So it's going over these details, helping me analyze the incident itself, errors and the cause of the fall, issues that they themselves brought up that I'm going to want to drill into to better understand what the case is. I then asked it to identify ways that the plaintiff might try to evade answering these questions and then give me an idea for potential follow up questions to refocus them. So this is able to give me different approaches and ideas in addition to just doing the analysis. So in here, I asked it to help me with drafting follow-up questions. So it's giving me an idea of ways that they may try to evade answering the questions and ways to try and redirect them and focus in on giving an actual answer. And so in here, it's giving me a single example. I could ask it to drill further into any one of these. So I'm always able to ask follow-up questions and have it get more specific about anything that it is generating for me. And then the final thing I have in here was I asked it to draft a letter to my client summarizing the weaknesses of the plaintiff's case and to give them an idea of the strategy for the deposition. I let it know that it can be casual since I have a close relationship with them. And so here it's generating sample letter for me, giving me an idea of what to begin with for this. So it's overviewing the different weaknesses that I already identified previously, and then giving me an idea of what the deposition strategy is going to be. If I wanted to, I could really drill into this more. I likely would have wanted to give it a better clarification on what exactly a strategy is. It's really drawing a lot from what I asked it in terms of those deposition questions, where I asked it to drill and focus in on the inconsistencies and weaknesses. But if I needed this to be different or just longer, I could ask it to revise this set section of the letter to really emphasize what exactly the strategy is. So in this instance, I didn't really give it a lot of prompting in terms of what is the strategy. So this is not a very long section of the letter, but this is an idea of what it's able to do in terms of putting together a draft. And so those are a couple of walkthroughs of how you can utilize this. If there are questions, I haven't seen anything come in yet. Feel free to send them through the Q&A. Otherwise, I'm going to go through and just touch on some general practices that lead to better answers from using CoCounsel, as well as just some tips on using CoCounsel at the King County Law Library. And so I mentioned this already, but being very clear and direct when I'm asking it to accomplish different tasks leads to the best results. Um, Letting it know exactly what it is that I'm looking for and not leaving anything up to interpretation leads to the best end result in terms of the output. So with the deposition strategy, I could have asked it to revise this differently in terms of emphasizing more what it is that I'm looking for it to accomplish. So I could even ask it to restructure this and focus in on more depth of what the strategy exactly is going to be. Um, if I ever get an answer that is not quite what I'm looking for, um, typically, like I mentioned earlier, I go back and look at what it is that I asked it to do. Normally, the issue is that I left something up to interpretation or I did not provide it with something that I need to actually have included. So I always recommend going through this from a sort of broad approach and then getting more and more specific and making sure that you are going through all of the steps of the process that you need. Um, the issues that I've run into in using this is that I leave things up to interpretation. Um, and so that is kind of the best approach. And I saw a question come in from Kristen about explaining practically how this works at the King County Law Library Westlaw Terminal. So, for example, would you bring in electronic copies of documents on a thumb drive or connect a laptop? And so the access for this is on dedicated terminals within the law libraries, either at the Kent or Seattle locations. And practically, there's kind of two ways that you might access these. Either if you have them on your email and you pull them up and add them in that way, or what I've seen most people doing and heard from most people is having an electronic copy available on a thumb drive that you're able to then direct it towards when you go here to choose upload files from a document. This then works like any other file upload process where you're able to then just direct it to that electronic thumb drive that you have plugged in. Um, that is what I've heard from others and has been my understanding of utilizing this. Tied in with that is, oh yes, Sean.
Sorry, I can speak to that a little bit. I will say that each of the terminals in the library, the public computers, there's a USB dongle on the top of the desk. So if you had your documents on a USB drive, that would, I think, be the easiest. You can just plug the drive into that dongle, and then, as Dan pointed out, you can just browse to it from CoCounsel.
And Sean, you may be able to answer this follow-up question about is there still a 2-hour time limit?
Yes, that's a good thing to point out. There is a 2-hour time limit on the public computers at the law library. So I was kind of happy to see you demonstrate downloading the transcripts and the results of the interaction, because if you have a thumb drive, you can just pop it into the computer and download the results for use later on your own computer.
And I see an additional follow-up, additional question from Barbara about I've heard from people using other resources that with large uploaded data sets that the AI may skip over chunks of information. Have you found this with CoCounsel, and is there a way to ensure that all the documents that you uploaded are being used to formulate the answers slash tasks? I've not necessarily seen it skipping over specific documents, but I once uploaded a 5,000 page document and asked it to answer questions from that document. And there were instances where it did not focus in on certain areas that I thought it might. And typically that goes into what it is that I mentioned, where the issue often lies with what it is that I've asked it to do and how specific I've asked it to be. And so often what I need to do if I wanted to focus in and review every single question or every single document and make sure that it is pulling out everything that I need to be very clear with the prompt that I've written to make sure that it is looking at each of these documents and pulling out that information. Or if there is a specific topic that I need it to drill into, I have to ask it and tell it, focus in on this topic. If it did not, like I mentioned, I can always ask it to go back in and make sure that it reviews that document. Sometimes what I've found helps as well is similar to what I have in this workflow that I just went through, where I asked it to review certain documents initially and look at smaller sets of data before really starting to open it up, or focusing it in on exactly what it is that I want. If I've uploaded multiple materials, I can always ask it to then focus in on a specific resource. So let's say that I have a large data set here. I can go into this and choose upload files from this matter. If I need it to be really focusing on a specific resource, I can go into this and then choose that document, select that. Then anything that I ask, it's going to be looking exactly at that resource that I've shown it. Um, and so that has been kind of the approach that I've found that works best, is to make sure that when I'm asking it to do a review, to really focus in on what it is that I'm asking it to accomplish, and um, to make sure that if I needed to focus on a specific resource, to have it look at that resource in particular.
I
And I
have
see. Oh yes.
Sorry. Sorry, Dan. I have one quick question. I know that w- for any documents that are downloaded or used on the public machines here at King County Law Library, as soon as the user logs off the machine, the computer is completely reset. So we know that there's no documents whatsoever retained on those machines. When people upload documents into CoCounsel, Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that sort of retention?
Yes. Yeah. I can handle that right now. So in CoCounsel, when you log out, it is not set to automatically delete anything that was uploaded at that time. It's being set to purge the system every 24 hours. So it will be deleting things on a daily basis. But the best practice is if you've uploaded anything in here, let's say I look at this pro se complaint summarization that I have. The best practice is when you're finishing up and you've retrieved the documents that you need, you've downloaded those and saved them to a flash drive that you may have brought in, or you've emailed them to yourself. Once you're getting ready to fully be done, to go over to the side here where I see the chats that I've done and choose delete chat. This is going to delete that entire record. It's going to delete anything that I uploaded into this. So that is going to be the most surefire way to make sure that anything that you provided this is gone. There's the fail safe that is going to be set up that will delete things every 24 hours, but this makes sure that as soon as you step away, anything that you may have uploaded in here, as well as the chats that you've had, are gone.
Gotcha. That's very good to know. So deleting the
Mhm.
chat will also delete any documents that you've uploaded into the system.
Correct.
Got it.
Yes. Yeah. So this will remove that chat as well as anything uploaded in here. So
Got it.
all of these are now gone. So when I do an additional demo, I'm going to need to recreate these.
Sorry.
No, it's totally fine. I prepared. I That's why I set up those separate ones because I was prepared to do that. I saw an additional question come in on does it answer procedural questions like motion scheduling since there's quite some changes recently? So the answer is that it can. The trouble here is that this, like I mentioned, is not tied into Westlaw itself. So if I needed it to answer procedural questions, I would need to direct it towards what it is that I wanted to answer questions about. So what I've done in the past is if I go back to all of my chats, I'm going to be able to show this where I asked it to draft an affidavit based on a probate code section. And so what I asked it to do was I wanted it to draft an affidavit according to requirements in probate code 13100. This is a California probate code section, and to have it accurately answer this question and accomplish this task, I needed to show it this actual document. So, what I would recommend doing if you were asking it to answer questions like about motion scheduling is to pull that up in Westlaw, potentially log into the patron access, Westlaw access at the law library, locate that motion scheduling rule, download a copy of that, and then provide it in here. Um, and then once I've uploaded that into it, I can then ask it questions about that document specifically or those rules. So with here, I was able to ask it to draft an affidavit based on the requirements here. It then put together this variation for me, this sample. This is one where I then asked it to, I think, revise in Punjabi, and this was one where I don't I don't know how to read this, so I wasn't sure about the accuracy of this. But the person I was working with said that this looked pretty close to what their familiarity is. Um, and so when asking questions like that, it tends to help to direct it towards the actual resource. So I wouldn't be able to ask it those procedural questions necessarily and get an accurate response just because it's not able to search Westlaw and pull what the current motion scheduling rules are. But if I provided it with that, then I would be able to ask specific questions about that. So another example that I have in here is asking questions about the um, California Environmental Quality Act. I was able to just upload that full act in here, asked it to just summarize the act for me. I was then able to ask it specific questions about, in this instance, environmental impact reports. So there's kind of an additional step, at least at the moment, to get it to look at these documents specifically. I would need to provide it with those resources.
That's really interesting. And I'll just note that, for instance, in our Seattle location, we have three public computers that have access to Westlaw proper, and one that has access to CoCounsel. So there, you can access both Westlaw and CoCounsel on the same machine. So as Dan said, you can always download some materials, maybe court rules, local court rules perhaps,
Hmm.
and then upload them into CoCounsel and query CoCounsel about those rules.
Hmm.
That is very interesting. That's a very interesting presentation, Dan. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I'm glad to have had an opportunity to speak with everyone. I mentioned this to you before, Sean, but if people reach out with additional questions, feel free to route those to me, and I'm happy to help answer those.
Okay,
But I
will do.
appreciated the opportunity to present to everyone, and hopefully you find an opportunity to utilize this and try it out at the law library.
All right, that is great. Thank you, Dan.